This is the electric start kit I'm trying to make. It uses cables, pulleys, a motor, and a bunch of metal. But I do have a backup design that I'm working on too. This backup design has a lot of differences compared to this other model. The backup design will be a sealed unit that is hopefully gear driven. Now the main problem with having a gear driven system and why I didn't do it from the start is because these systems need to be able to reciprocate. And by that I mean that the kickstart arm can only go 150 degrees before you have to let it go back to zero again. And I want my kits to come off and on easy and not have to do anything inside the bike. And an electric motor is a lot more efficient when you can let it spin and spin and spin versus stopping and going and stopping and going. So that's what this model kind of solves. On my very first backup plan design, like the very first one I made, it ended up being really complex, using a crown gear, bevel gears, like worm gears, all sorts of stuff. Complexity like this is my worst nightmare. But at the time, I was really excited about it, so I printed it out and I gave it a test. But what ended up happening is while I was assembling everything, I actually broke some of the stuff and it did not print as well as I wanted anyways, so that kind of sucked. But honestly, I saw pretty much everything I needed to see. And with that, I started working on V2 of the backup design. This design took a much simpler approach. There was no crown gear, and the part count was way lower. And another thing that I was really trying to get down is the overall size of these things. If I want this to sit kind of by your foot, then it needs to be sleek and slim enough to not affect you too much when you're riding. So with those things in mind, I came up with this design. This design essentially takes a cam that pushes against the side of the case and lifts the shaft off the kickstart adapter. And like I said, it does that so it can reset back to zero from 150 degrees, achieving a full kick. I got this one printed as well, and when I went to test it, essentially the same thing happened again. The motor was spinning so fast, I could barely even tell what it was doing. But as usual, I pretty much saw everything I needed to see. It was at this point, I started thinking about V3 of this design. I went outside and I started holding the motor up against the bike in some places just to see where it would fit good. And I thought it looked really good when it was kind of down by the water pump and kind of covering the clutch cover. So I kind of based my design off of this placement. Now the V3 design is not done yet, but I can show you guys what I've gotten done so far. This design utilizes 2 worm gears and 2 worm wheels. One of those worm wheels is attached to an adapter, which is also attached to the kickstart knuckle adapter. Now the reason I did this is so that you can take it on and off the bike really easily and you don't need to mess with your kickstart shaft. The adapter will simply grab onto the knuckle that's underneath your kickstart, so it's an easy on and off. As for the other worm wheel, that's attached to a cam, and this is the cam that will mechanically lift the system off that kickstart shaft. Like I said, this design is still a work in progress for sure, but one of the main things I really don't like about this backup design is it'll probably be more expensive. I will need a lot more custom parts made, and I'll have to make the case out of probably billet aluminum or something, which would look really good, but it's also going to be a lot more expensive to manufacture, and I can only use so many off-the-shelf parts before I need some custom stuff. But I'm not sure exactly which team I'm on yet, because I think if I do this right, it could be super cool. In my next video, I'll probably revisit the cable design and put that swivel on it and try to give it a real start.